Welcome to the final parts of painting this lovely duckling in watercolour. Today we'll focus on painting those soft feathers and also that little bit of greenery down the bottom as well. So it's time to complete this painting today. So let's get the brushes wet and let's get started. To make a start on this, what I need to do is soften down my pencil marks. I've got a Faber-Castell eraser here, a putty eraser. Then very lightly soften down your pencil lines around the outside edge. I do that because it looks like it's outlined otherwise. I don't want to have an outline around this little duckling. Otherwise it'll look far too cartoony. I can just about make out where it is look, so that'll do me. And I'm going to go for lemon yellow. That'll be our first mix. Lemon yellow, that one there. And pop that in there. And I want this to be more of a, more of a milky consistency. When you look at the colour wheel, you can see that opposite yellow, which is a primary colour, you've got the secondary colour of violet. So I'm going to use those two colours together, but only a small amount of violet, and that will dull that yellow down just a touch. So this is ultramarine violet. We've already used that within the beak and within the eye. So I'm going to pop a little bit of that in there. You can see how it goes a little bit duller. I can always make more than one mix up. One with more ultramarine violet in it if you want to, and one with less. The more ultramarine violet you add into that, I'm just get a little bit on my brush. So the ultramarine violet sort of neutralises it being a secondary colour, doesn't it? And that's ideal. That's what we need, those two colours. So I'm going to mix the same again, but this time with a little bit more ultramarine violet in it. Then we need one more colour as well. Okay, that's those two colours mixed up now. I'm going to go for one more. And that's lemon yellow with a touch of burnt sienna. Okay, lemon yellow. We won't need too much of this one. This is quite evident when you look underneath the chin, around there. And also, where you've got this whiter patch there, there's a bit of a sort of hint of that colour in the back of the neck, isn't it? So between the neck and the back of the bird. So it's more or less those two areas where I can see this. Burnt sienna. Oh, too much. So I need to add much more lemon yellow in that mix now. Oh dear, what am I like? Let's go for a larger brush to begin with. This is a size 6. Okay, let's wet the bird now. Here we go. Be very careful around the top of the beak and obviously around the eye. All the way through to the edge. Don't worry too much about the spiky bits just yet. All those stray feathers that we can see. We'll add those in as we go along. But the first thing we need to do is add that foundation wash onto the paper. So wet it 2 or 3 times. And by doing so, you find that the paper will stay wetter that little bit longer. Just gives you that bit more working time really. What you can do is have a run line, like a running edge, say down there. I can work to that edge as well. Because I've got a running edge here, really watery down there, that will stay wetter that little bit longer. And that just means that when I want to carry on down from the neck to the body, I can just pick up this water and carry on wetting it through. Okay, that's soaked in just about enough now. Start off with the lightest colour first of all. I'm going to pop that initially towards the eye. And I want this to fade out to the white of the paper the higher up it goes. So very carefully, not to touch the eye if you can help it, okay? We've got a bit of a whiter area around the back of the eye, but don't worry about that, we can add that in later. Straightforward enough to do, honestly. Trust me, I'm a doctor. Okay, maybe I'm not, but you know what I mean. What you can do, just out of interest, dry your brush off a minute, or semi-dry it. Lift off a small amount of paint there, just to lighten it slightly. It'll still blend, that's okay. The top of the head, using this damp clean brush, just very lightly fade that paint so it fades to the white of the paper. Just about. A little bit more down here now, but not much. It's not quite as rich down there, is it? And fade that back. Adjust it as you go along. Now the other colours we've got our darker one here, which is separated a little bit. I can add that in, just around here, around the top of the eye. Just a hint of it, not much. A tiny amount down there, below the eye. And there too. There's hardly any at all. Just to vary the way it looks on the paper, that's all we're trying to do here. Then gradually work my way down the head. Just for this initial wash, re-dampen it. To make sure it's nice and damp. You don't want it soaking wet. And also maintain that run line down there as well still. Still nice and wet down there. This is where you can go in with the yellow first of all. And then move it along. Remember, it's whiter and lighter. Whiter and lighter as you work your way towards the back. Probably a little bit more in here. Like that. And then, there's always the then. And then, what I'm going to do is go for this richer colour down here. You know the one now. Lemon yellow and burnt sienna. I'll add that one into here. This is where I said it was warmer. You've got that lovely sort of bright yellow colour down there. And also dull as well in places. I know, it's not completely bright down there, is it? It's in the shade down there. So to compensate for that, let's go for our other colour. This is like a green now, isn't it, really? But you wouldn't think it when it's on the paper, would you? No. And then add that in. Just add a bit more shade there. And we can go over that again later, if we need to. We'll see. See how it dries first of all. We know that watercolours very often dry a little bit lighter than when you first put them on the paper. How much lighter it dries will depend on the amount of pigment that you've used within your paints. Okay, start working your way along the body now, doing the same thing. Look for those lighter areas and ease off the colours around those lighter areas. The pattern on the back, and also, as I mentioned, along the front of the chest as well. Give it a quick dry with a hairdryer, and then we can start working on those details. And we won't need too many of them, that's for sure. Oh, before we go, have you noticed, with the white along the front of the chest, it's more of a sort of bluey feel, isn't it? Not much, just a hint of blue. So I'm going to go back to our blue colour, which was that phthalo blue and ultramarine violet, and water that down on one side, like that. Really, really watery. Test it out. Yeah, maybe a little bit more water in there. That'll do. Just add that in to the front of the chest. Only a touch. If you're not careful, it will start to look green with that yellow on there. So when we add the white paint over the top, I know I'd said it again, didn't I? White paint. We can bridge over the top of that instead. Okay, now I've got to give it a dry. The first thing I like to do when I'm working with feathers is to paint in some reference marks using your fine brush. When you look at the reference photograph, look at the angles of those lines you can see within the feathers. So for example, on the top of the head, the feather marks are curved, aren't they? So think about this like a clock face. So when you're looking at a clock face, and above the head you've got probably the lines going more towards 12 o'clock with a slight curve. Then to the left they're going towards 11 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock and so on. The same applies to the other side as well. Adding these reference marks in initially, before you go in with all that fine detail, will help to keep you on track. Because I know for a fact that when I'm working on feathers or even fur, and I don't put those reference marks in, I find very often I'll start putting lines in the wrong direction. Because these lines help to create form, so the overall shape of the bird or whatever you're painting, and this will help it become much more 3D. So add those reference marks in, then you can start putting the details in between. The colour I'm using for this is that lemon yellow with a little bit more ultramarine violet mixed within it. So it's a bit more sort of browny green colour, isn't it? But not by much. I'm going to carry on around the eye now. I've got my reference marks in. Notice how the marks down here are very small, aren't they? But try and consider the direction these lines go in all the time. Constantly looking at the curvature of those lines. Constantly looking at the crisscrossing of those lines. And also, one last thing, constantly looking at the length of those lines as well. One more tip I'm going to give you before we're going to carry on with this is when you get to an area like here, towards the edge of the head, try to flick out those lines. You have to turn your wrist around a little bit. So with me being left-handed, I have to turn my wrist that way. Or I can just simply turn the paper around as well. And then flick out those very fine lines. Just ensure that you don't have too much paint on that brush, okay? Otherwise you find that the lines are far too thick and far too bold. Best time to do the edges is when you've hardly got any paint left on that brush. Just before you're due to reload it. You think, oh, I need to reload my brush. Well, hang on. Head to those lighter areas first, where you want those finest of lines. Add those in before you reload that brush. Once we've got these details on, we'll very lightly soften them. Then just one final layer over the top of that. I'm constantly looking for the shapes around here as well. Like for example, this section here is a little bit darker on this part of the jawline, just to there. Then it eases off the higher up it goes. So I'm going to take some more paint off. Then some finer marks higher up, short, as well as you can see there, but fewer marks. Just so it doesn't fill it in. If you fill out all that area with detail, you'll find you can just darken it down and flatten it back. And we don't want to do that. This area here, I've sort of isolated a little bit at the moment. So I'll do a bit more work in there yet. But you can increase the amount of details towards this end of this fan shape. I know, that's what it really is, isn't it? It's like a big fan. I'm looking around sort of those darker areas, you know, and see what I can find. And increasing the amount of details within those areas as well. Do notice how I'm changing the colours as I'm working around this. Now we're going back to the yellow, the more yellow version. As you know, the lemon yellow and the ultramarine violets. Just working around here now, slightly yellower towards the middle of the back. Then gets duller and whiter, probably slightly greyer towards the top. Probably a touch more in there, but not much. Then back to this colour again. I've used lots of that colour actually. Then that can go towards the back, too much on the brush. Tap most of it off. That's better. It's really fine now, isn't it? Then bridge the gap, but leave plenty of gaps in between as well. Then all we need to do next is lightly soften this down using our larger brush. But very lightly indeed. So if I get my size 6, take most of the water off, not all of it. Then very lightly, in the direction the feathers grow, soften them back a touch. Keep washing that brush out as well. Otherwise you keep moving paint from one place to another. And obviously you don't want to be doing that. Then once you've done this, give it a quick dry. Right, it's nice and dry. Remember our brown that we had? That one there. That was, if I remember rightly, burnt umber and Payne's grey. But I have also popped a bit of our blue in it, which is that phthalo blue and ultramarine violet. So I popped a little bit of that in there. That's darkened it a little bit more, as you can see, and that's ideal now. I want that fairly watery though. I don't want it too thick. Okay, size 2 brush again. Carry on. Tap most of the paint off. Then use those finer marks to make sure it doesn't drip onto my painting there, you know. It does sometimes, you know, if you're not careful. Just finer marks and start to add in some slightly darker details using this mix, but you don't need much of it. I can add some slightly darker lines for the feathers within the head. When there's not much paint on this brush again, remember that. I know I said it earlier on, but it's true. Just ease off those areas for now, up until you're due for reloading that brush, as I mentioned. Then you can go there. Then you can add that in. Be patient with it. There's no rush. Now around here, you can see the lines are very tiny. So I'm just more or less stippling in a way. Just very tiny short lines, that's all it is. So add the darker accents in where you can see them, just using this sort of watery mixture really. You can see just a hint of darker area around here. Give it a tap if it's too much. Just a hint of that there. Again, you don't want too much of it. And also towards the front of the head as well, but not much again. Look around the body doing the same thing, and then we can finalise all of this by adding a few highlights here and there as well. We are nearly there. Now for the white paint. Here we go. Opaque white. If you remember, we used this on both the eye and the beak. So I'll do the same again, but this time obviously on the feathers. Tap some of that off, again so it's not overloaded. You can see just above the eye, to the left hand side of the eye, it's a little bit whiter around there. So painting a few little fine lines. Comes across the eye like that, over the top, then flicks out towards the left hand side, a bit more like a little line like that. A few odd ones down below. Then we've got this cheeky area here, which I think is probably the ear, as I mentioned earlier, possibly. I could be wrong there. Let me know in the comments down below if I'm wrong, okay? What do you think it is? Now towards the top of the head, again we're going for a milky consistency there. We can lighten the area now by creating those fine lines just over the top. and into that white background. I know you can't see it in the background, but you can see it just about over the top of that yellow area. It's just enough to lighten it down, that's all it's for. Don't just paint it over, use plenty of fine lines, in the correct direction of course. You can thicken this down to more of a creamy consistency. For those areas it needs to be lighter or whiter. If you end up covering up some of your lines like I've done around here, let it dry, then put those lines back in again. You'll be able to paint over the top of the white paint. The colour does fade a little bit when you paint over the top of white, but it'll still stand out enough for it to be effective. Okay, a few more now towards here. I'm going to go for the brighter areas first. For this area here, for example, but not right to the edge though. I will put a few odd ones near the edge, or even on the edge, and maybe over the edge, just to brighten it slightly more. This isn't that visible, is it? Because it's quite pale in this area. Then a few odd ones, just dotting through towards the top of the back there. Next I want to work on the grasses and those leaves. As for the colours, let's go for a mixture of sap green and burnt umber. This just dullens it down a fraction. Or we can use a little bit of Payne's grey, something like that will work just as well. And then the second colour, I want to go for lemon yellow again and a touch of phthalo blue. Size 6 brush, and all we need to do is wet those areas first of all, so I'm going to wet down there. And again, I'm going to fade down the bottom edge. We don't need a lot of this at all, do we? And we can also add some grass blades in there as well. We can darken this with our brown colour, which is just on screen there. So wet further than you need to go. So I'm going to wet down to the sort of level without there. So I'm going to wet further down to here. Grab your bright yellow green. Just drop that on the paper initially. So we'll click on this leaf on the right hand side. Because this is wet, this will fade as it dries. Some round there as well. Work your way around. We will vary these colours shortly as well, because it's too samey, isn't it? We don't want it looking too much the same. There's one roughly here as well, and it doesn't have to be the same as that photograph at all. Of course not. Pull some of that paint off, so it's faded. There you go, something like that will do. Go for your sap green version. Drop a little bit of that into the wet paint, creating a little bit of textures here and there. It will fade as it dries anyway. I'll put some fairly randomly, leaving gaps in between. This one can be darker if need be. Not intentional. It's just the way it is. Then this one's separate, isn't it? This one here, but we can separate that in a bit. Grab some of your brown and drop that in. But just in places. It's like a black brown, isn't it, that? Then we'll define all of this shortly. Size 2 brush. Go for your sap green version. A bit more water in there. These are more of a milky consistency, by the way. Both these two greens. And we can add, got a blade there, haven't we? So we're going to add a blade here. So starting from the top and pull down straight through here and then disappears. Let's give it a friend, shall we? I'm going to put another one around here. It's not on the photograph, but it doesn't matter. Let's curl the tip over. Bring it that way first of all to get nice points. Then curl the tip over and bring that down as well. Again, once this is dry, we can tweak all of that. Put another one around here, shall we? We've got one there anyway, but I'm just going to add one this way. But this time, let's go from the inside out. Oh, look at that blending. Just a smaller one just about there. Probably another one just there as well. Just a tiny one overlapping as well. Well, let's give that a dry and then we'll fine tune it. Okay, back to size 2. It's nice and dry, by the way. So we can add just a few more basic details towards the grass blades and also the leaves that are in there as well. I'm just going to darken one side of this blade here. Very lightly. Then towards the centre part of this blade. Barely touching the paper. Barely touching it. And then on the left hand side as well. When you do this, make sure that you haven't got too much paint on that brush. Then we can darken one side. Just one side like that. As for the rest of the area, just paint a few basic details here and there. That's what you want to do. Then we'll fade that out again towards the bottom. Remember, we don't want this area to be too detailed, do we? Just want a suggestion of detail within there. So put some lines in, then lightly soften it back. Just make sure that some of the areas are slightly darker than others. And you can add a little bit of burnt umber in there as well, just to darken it in places. And to vary the leaf colour, in fact you can actually use the other green over the top of some of these areas, just to lighten them first of all, and to vary the colour a little bit more. And then, what you can do, so the final thing, apart from signing it of course, to lift off a few basic, and I mean basic details here and there. Make sure it's nice and dry though, okay? Just a few highlights here and there. Dab it with some, well, cleanish kitchen roll. Nearly clean, I know. A few little marks to add some highlights into it. Might highlight the edge of this one here. Just by carefully going over the same place time and time again like that, look. And lift. If you want to change the colour of some of these, you can do, but do it very carefully, okay? Some of this is a little bit too dark, so even the grass blades are probably a little bit too dark. We know we can highlight the grass blades anyway with some white, if need be, or we can just lift off a little bit of paint just to lighten them a fraction like that. If you take off too much, you can always touch it back in again once it's dry. Now for more information on painting feathers, I'll pop a link to the top right hand corner of the screen for you. I'll see you there.